Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. My name is Nur Hidayah binti Muhammad Yunus from Polytechnic Suta Idrisha. My topic for today is Halalan Thayyiban Food Handling Practices, a review on the street food vendors in Sungai Besar, Selangor. My presentation outline start with the introduction. Next is on the literature review. Third is a research methodology. Fourth is a data analysis and finding. And the last one is a discussion, recommendation, and the conclusion. Street food has become an important component of the food distribution system in many cities in Malaysia, particularly for the midday meals. However, certain street vended food can pose significant risk to the consumer due to microbiological contamination. The question of hygiene and halal becomes critical for Muslim consumer and also non-Muslim consumer in Malaysia. Background of the study: Halalan Thayyiban means the product is permissible to be consumed or used and must be good and beneficial to the consumer. It comes from Ansar Corp 2019. Everybody are responsible to prepare clean and hygienic food, especially to food service operators. However, halal is not only on the certification, but it also includes the concept of hygiene, cleanliness, and safety, for all which is halalan and thayyiban. As referring to halal thayyiban concept in food service industry, the guarantee of halal and thayyiban must be from the farm to the fork. This principle is one of the Sharia rules intended to protect the graciousness of human life as to uphold best dietary habit granted by Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. It took by Al-Qardawi 2007. The street food vendors provide and serve easy access to a wide range of food and beverage, goods and service in the public. Next is on the problem statement. There are three main problem statements. By an hour review, almost street food vendors does not apply and display their halal certificate by JAKIM at their vending. JAKIM means Department of Islamic Development Malaysia, who are responsible to acknowledge the certification of halal. Street food vendors can pose significant risk to the consumer due to microbiological contamination. And number three is a personal hygiene, a proper handling of food and sanitation practice in the food service area. There are two research objectives in this study. First is to identify the street food vendors have a halal certificate from JAKIM, and number two is to identify the level of personal hygiene, food handling, and sanitation among the street food vendors. The research question is a reflect from the research objective. Next is on the study framework. There are two variables. First is independent and next is dependent variables. On the independent variables, first is on halal certification by JAKIM, and number two is personal hygiene, food handling, and sanitation. The variables come from Nuruddin et al. 2014. On the dependent variable, you would like to know about halalan thayyiban and food handling practices on the food street vendors. Significance of the study. There are two perspectives. First is on academic. Refer to all undergraduate students, especially for student diploma Perkhidmatan Makanan Amalan Halal at Polytechnic Suta Idrisha. And for practical perspective, the finding in this research can help the street food vendors who are new in the industry to come up with the idea and concept to open the street food in order to provide adequate facilities. For local authority, for example, for Majlis Daerah Sabak Penam, we play a role to guide and ensure the food street vendors in Sungai Besar follow the orders and rules. Literature review. From Sazlin et al., the dimension of relationship were found that halal and haram rules are clearly stated in the Quran and the Hadith. When it comes to the concept of halal and thayyiban, where halal is not only permissible but also wholesome, there is lack of awareness and understanding. Therefore, from Benny Oliveira and Bedri 2007, said most of the vending sites of the Trinidad West Indies did not have pipe-bound water and drain to channel wastewater and toilet facilities. It shown that there are now complete facilities in order to ensure the hygiene practices. Most important part in food handling practice is by Mosopi and Von Holly suggested that holding conditions with favor and the survival and germination of the bacteria. Next, on the methodology. To do this study, I was used quantitative survey method to collect data at the Sungai Besar. I choose using questionnaire in the Google Form platform to overcome the issue of pandemic COVID-19. All at all, the data was analyzed by using Microsoft Excel. Research design used for this study is a cross-sectional, it is descriptive study that can be used to describe the data and characteristics of the population of the study. There are 95 respondents of the street food vendor at Sungai Besar include from 6th Street, which is Jalan Stadium, Jalan Bagan Sungai Besar, Jalan Pancang Bendera, Jalan Malinja, Pekan Sungai Haji Dorani, and Jalan Bunga Matahari. There are 3 sections in a questionnaire. Start with the demographic profile, halal certificate, and the section C is a personal hygiene, food handling and sanitation of street food vendors. This is on the data analysis and finding. The table shown that the percentage of the female more than male in on gender. The majority of the vendors from 36 to 40 years old, and most of them own the business and get income 1,500 to 3,000 per month. 72.6% is on the food business and the rest is on beverage. The table shown the surrounding of the vending site agree that it can be seen from the table and chart from the frequency of the street food vendors that apply the halal certificate will go down slightly with the percentage 32.6%, while the frequency of street food vendors does not apply the halal certificate for their vending thereof with the percentage 67.4%. Overall, we can see that a clear trend that the street food vendors are more preferred to apply the halal certificate from JAKIM for their street food vending in Sungai Besar. This particular bar graph shows the food handling practices among the street food vendor. It appears that the bar represents strongly agree for the food staff wash properly before cooking as the highest with the 48.42%. However, the respondent who chose the food staff wash once before cooking as the second highest with the 47.36%. This makes sense because the food staff must be cleaned and washed first before be served to the customer. Next, the respondent chose to strongly agree for the third item. It slightly lowers from the first item with 23.15%, while the fourth item, which is the oil reuse for several times, is the lowest for the strongly agree with the 12.63%. This is because the respondent want to maintain the quality of the food that they serve and sold. The table of surrounding of vending site show that all vendors agree that their sites is clean. On the waste disposal method, most of the food street vendors not throw on the street and drainage. They are only thrown into the bin was provided by Majlis Daerah Sabak Renang. On the conclusion, the joint cooperation of government, consumer and vendors themselves in order to improve and sustain their food street vendors should seek to provide opportunities to street food business to acquire the knowledge, value and attitude in a way to protect and improve their food handling practices. The vendor also need to have a halal certificate from JAKIM to improve the quality and further increase the awareness of traders on the importance of this halal certificate because it can convince buyers hygiene is maintained and others. This research has outlined the understanding of halal and Taiwan food handling practices in Sungai Besar, principally the importance of the training of the street food vendors on halal, safety and hygiene, and Islamic principle in business was also indicated. And as a recommendation, train the street food vendors with academic programs like food hygiene and sanitation. And the purpose of education program should be to make street food vendors and all concerned with it informally about vended food more aware of food hygiene and sanitation, as well as technological aspect on street food vendors and consumption. It is only through training and the subsequent monitoring of the situation of the street food vendors can be integrated into and considered as a responsible part of a city food supply system. Thank you very much.